would you go so far as to raise taxes on the wealthy?
To the extent, to me, in tax reform, as we did in North Carolina, everything should be on the table if it demonstrates to us we're producing economic growth, which helps everybody in this country.
All right. Now, that was a view held by a number of other Republican senators and congressmen I talked to, and that surprised me. I don't know if it surprised you, but I want to bring into this discussion, along with Charlie, the former Wisconsin governor, the CEO of the Financial Services Roundtable, Tim Pawlenty, Minnesota. I apologize. It's been one of those days, Governor, so please excuse me. What do you make of that idea that, all right, offset some of the taxes or the tax cuts with a Uber tax or on the super wealthy, or no tax cut at all for them? What do you think?
Yeah, well, first of all, Neil, we should focus, as Charlie mentioned, on middle-class tax cuts and tax relief. That's the right strike zone. You don't need to give the wealthy a tax cut, but that's different from saying their taxes should be increased. And people should remember the top marginal rate on taxes now is already 39.6%. If you add the Obamacare taxes and some other hidden taxes at the federal level, you're already at 42, 43.
And by the way, those taxes aren't going away. Maybe they get rid of the medical device tax, but I mean, all those other taxes you alluded to,
not going away.
Keep it there.
And then you add state and local taxes, and you're already over 50%. So I think most people would look at that and say, maybe they don't need a tax cut, but they certainly don't need to have more piled on in terms of a tax increase.
Why do you think the administration or Bannon, to the point, threw it out there?
Well, I think two things. One is the point about populism. It's an easy punching bag. And then number two, they need to pay for these other cuts. And I think they're going to have to look at this holistically.
Yeah, I agree. Although I don't think, if you're talking about who pays the most taxes and who, if you give a tax break to, will lend the most stimulus to the economy, it's not the middle class. Okay, middle class people, you cut their tax. I mean, I hate to be, cut and dry about this.
Or the elitist snob.
Yeah, if you cut their taxes, they may spend it, or they may pay down debt. But we do know that if you cut rich people's taxes, they spend it more. You get more of an stimulus.
Or they invest.
Or they invest. And not only that, a lot of these small businesses file as individuals, right?
By the way, they're free. Anyone in any strata is free to do with their money what they want to do.
Right. I'm just saying that
you're talking about the bang for the buck.
I'm just saying that you start, hammering rich people or small businesses that file as individuals that that maybe hit that number. I'm telling you, I think you're playing with fire with this economy.
You know what I'm beginning to wonder about, though, Governor, is again, I always talk about whether they're telegraphing out of the White House where they want to go with this. And something tells me by even throwing out that tax on the rich or no tax cut at all for the rich, yes, to your populist point, this is going to try to help the base and certainly make it easier to sell. But maybe it's a way for this president, who's had a sort of an acrimonious relationship with Republicans, to make overtures to Democrats for things down the road. What do you think?
Well, I think that's a slippery slope for him because they're not going to be with him, and he needs to understand, how he got elected, and that's why I think populism is part of this equation. But to Charlie's point, you also have to look beyond politics and look at what's actually going to positively impact the economy, and continuing this sort of anemic sub-2% GDP growth isn't going to work for anybody.
It's a great point, and you just wish there was some more movement in Washington on this, some sort of debate. I mean, we are literally debating some of the dumbest subjects in the world right now in Washington. We are debating who's having dinner with the president, really crazy stuff about Jeff Sessions, when we have an economy that's growing at 1
But the president promotes that.
I know, but he's
the one who keeps talking about Jeff Sessions.
That's my point.
And gets the media talking.
I mean, let's be real clear here. The economy's growing at 1.5%. This is not just about giving people tax cuts. This is how do you get 1.5% and take it up to 3%.
And he's the one who's got to get a message.
You preach it to the choir here.
Governor, what do you think of that? Because that's a problem. He has a lot of good, sound ideas, and there are many people who aren't big fans of tax cuts and in this environment. I understand that. But his overall economic package does offer the potential to spur activity, and yet he gets in the way of his own message. And I'm wondering, all this obsession is hurting him.
Yeah, Neil, and it isn't even rocket science. I mean, look, you could get a reasonably informed 12th grader to say, do something called tax cuts, do something called the health care reform, do something on infrastructure, keep the military strong, and get the economy growing, and in 2 years he'd look like a hero. And, knock off the sideshow. It isn't that hard. It just isn't that hard.
Yeah.
Listen, I've known the guy for a long time. I actually personally like him. it's hard for him.
I guess it is.
Very hard for him.
I guess it is. All right. Thank you very, very much, guys. And Governor, my apologies. And again, but great seeing you again.
I'm deeply insulted, but we do like our neighbors
All
in
right.
Wisconsin.
As you should be.